Hello, I hope that you're all well, and if the sun is shining, you have managed to get some fresh air today. My name is Poppy, and I'm an IT apprentice just finishing my second year at Nestlé.
And I'm Abby Scargill. I work in the Academy team, and I'm really hopeful that this podcast is going to be influential to a lot of people as it touches a topic that I know is close to many, which is mental health.
We are lucky to be joined by a few Nestlé employees and George from Gen Healthy Minds to give a voice to mental health.
Everyone has mental health, which can be referred to as emotional health or well-being, and it's just as important as good physical health. It affects how we think, how we act and feel in situations, and for some individuals, playing a full part in the workplace, with friends and family, and within the community can be extremely challenging. Over the course of your life, if you experience mental health problems, your thinking, your mood, and behaviour could be affected. So it's important to recognise when we feel low ourselves, or to recognise it in our friends and family and be able to offer the support that is needed. With the courage of those on the podcast today sharing their personal experiences, we hope to inspire others to know that it is okay not to be okay, and to start the discussions on how we can begin to ask and receive help to lead a healthier and happier mental health.
In the UK today, the Mental Health of Children and Young People survey identified 1 in 6, which is 16%, of children aged 5 to 16 years were identified as having probable mental disorder, increasing from 1 in 9, which is 10.8%, in 2017. In relation to the pandemic, it is even more important to check in with our own mental well-being and those people close to us. COVID-19 has meant that some of us are isolated from friends and family, unable to attend social and physical activities, and have faced drastic changes to our daily routines. The least we can do is to start the discussions so that it helps people to realise it is okay to talk about how we feel and that we are not alone. So today we have 4 lovely guests on the call. So would you like to start and introduce yourselves?
Hey guys, my name's Evie Barnes. I've worked at Nestlé for around 7 months now, and I'm currently in the sales finance team.
Hi, my name's Daniel Craig. I've been at Nestlé since October, so about 7 months now, and I'm also in the sales finance team.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Morgan. I've been at Nestlé for 2.5 years now, and I'm currently in T-Hub Logistics.
Hi, I'm George Anderson. I am a wellbeing and performance coach with Generation Healthy Minds, and I've been working with the early careers team at Nestlé for about the last 18 months.
Great, lovely to have you all on the call today. Evie, would you mind sharing some of the struggles that you've had with your own mental health for our listeners?
So I've struggled with my mental health for so many years now. It's mainly been to do with anxiety for me. I remember I had my first panic attack when I was in year 5, and it meant that I was in a position at a very young age where I had to learn to deal with it. So for me, the main thing about my mental health is that it's never 100% gone and there is no cure. It's been very up and down. There have been times where I feel like it's gone away completely, and then there have been times when it's come crashing back down, and it feels like everything has gone wrong again, and I'm back to square one, which, as you can imagine, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate, is such a hard feeling, and it can be so hard to overcome that. So that's when those coping mechanisms really come in handy, and it's something that over the years I've learned how to deal with more. Since joining Nestle, there have been things that I've felt really anxious about, for example, presenting. When I first joined in September, I would never have imagined myself being on this podcast right now. So obviously I've made quite a big step in the right direction. I've had to present to, I think my personal best is nearly 800 people or something.
Wow, that's incredible.
Was so nerve-wracking, but I'm so proud of myself for doing it. But my team and everybody here at Nestle and my family and my friends are so supportive of me. And I I used to feel embarrassed asking for help, but I don't anymore at all. And I feel like the support is 100% there, and that's what makes me feel so comfortable within my own mental health. Now that I've learned my coping mechanisms, and I've learned that I always have support around me.
That's incredible. As if you've presented to nearly 800 people. That really is amazing considering you've been here for 7 months and you couldn't imagine yourself doing that. And that's a big achievement. So well done, Evie.
Thank you.
Similar to Evie, to be honest. I've struggled with anxiety pretty much since I was about 14. Um, and it's been really difficult going through that because at the time I didn't really understand what was happening. I was just really confused and like it was just really, really difficult.
No, I guess for me, like similarly, it started from like quite a young age. So I can like look back, and I guess it started from when I was about 8, with like a lot of anxiety going throughout school. And I guess I hit a point where the anxiety wasn't as much of a problem, but I got like really depressed from looking back and thinking about all the time that I kind of missed from being anxious. So it kind of spun from one side to the other. So I was looking back rather than living in the present. And that depression is more or less continued for, well, up until today, is something that I still struggle with. The anxiety is still there and it still affects me day to day. But it's just kind of battling that to try and live in the present and trying to live the best life that I possibly can through different like coping mechanisms and strategies that are kind of able to implement. Obviously you still have bad days, still have like really bad days, but it's trying to make sure that it doesn't get as bad as it has been or it could be, just to live the best life that I potentially can. Go ahead, George.
Mate, just amazing listening to the three of you talk about your personal stories, so calm and measured, and so much has been spoken about and written about in the last few years about how we need to be speaking about it more and and having the courage to talk about our mental health, and here we are, listening to these stories really is inspiring and hopefully will inspire and empower many others as well listening to this throughout Nestlé, that it's not only safe but actually it's beneficial as well. It can help to talk about it, to normalize it. Mental health is a continuum, so it's not just you either have a mental health disorder or you don't. It's like a 1 to 10 scale, and if you have at the top end 10, 9, 8, 9, 10, thriving, flourishing, that's the official positive psychology term for it. If you're flourishing, then you're doing very, very well, and feeling very happy, feeling connected, feeling satisfied, feeling optimistic and hopeful about the future. You've got everything you need around you, but you've also got the drive and the motivation to go after goals. And then at the other end, you've got down at the 1s and 2s where you are in the mental ill health or mental health disorders. But it is a continuum, and some people may, myself for example, most of the time I'm up at the top end and I'm feeling really bouncy and good and positive. I've got many strategies for making sure that I stay as far as possible at that end. But some days, this morning for example, I was writing my journal. I was writing, I'm just feeling really flat today, and I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was, so I was writing down all the things that I've got on my mind. And if you'd asked me on a scale of 1 to 10 what my mental health was in that moment, I'd have said I was about a 3 or a 4. But I've built it up through the course of the day. Now, if you're struggling with mental health and you're down at the 1s, 2s, and 3s for prolonged periods of time, then and this is where we're seeing that we're getting mental health issues. Then that's the point where it's like, well, actually, it doesn't matter what I do, or I need to deploy my ultimate weapon here, my ultimate tool, which is to put my hand in the air and say, actually, I could do with a hand here. And I know that Nestlé is very, very well set up for not just accommodating that, but supporting it and encouraging it as well, which is why, again, it's tremendous to see that, because I think a lot of people struggle with knowing, and maybe this is the conversation we could have on this podcast, like, how do you do it? How do you start those conversations? How do you go to your line manager or a mental health first aider and say, actually, could we have a word of, I'm not feeling great at the moment, and I think it's going to start affecting my performance or my happiness.
It's a great point, George. Does anyone feel comfortable to share about how they reached out or when they reached out?
Obviously, as I mentioned, I was very young and I didn't really understand what was going on when I was having these panic attacks. So I felt the need to tell my family, specifically my mum, as soon as it happened. And then when I kind of came to terms with it, I feel like I bottled things up a lot more. And it wasn't until I became a mental health first aider here at Nestlé and I was put in the position where I was invited as kind of a guest speaker to talk about my experience. It wasn't until then that I actually sat down and spoke about the end to end process from the very start to now, completely and fully in front of a group of people, which seems crazy because it was going on for years and years and years before I actually sat down and told people the full story. But when I did, I felt a huge weight lifted off my shoulders, and I would really encourage doing it if you can. As George mentioned, journaling is incredible. If you don't want to physically speak to somebody, writing it down can be so useful as well, because I know people, and not a lot of people are in the position where they feel like they can speak verbally to somebody about it. I wasn't expecting it to feel as good as it did, but it was crazy the amount it helped me talking
Evie,
about it.
a quick question on that, Evie, if you don't mind. When you say that it felt like a tremendous weight lifted, do you think that you'd been maybe hiding it, or trying to get away with people not noticing it, and then when you finally did talk about it, it's like you didn't have the pressure of trying to pretend anymore? Was there any element of that in it, do you think?
Yeah, almost. So to be honest, I didn't want to seem like a burden, and I don't like being the center of attention, and I don't like asking for help. So as you can imagine, I was holding back quite a lot, which was a shame. But yeah, it was just almost the relief of knowing that other people were aware of my problems, and the response that I got when I shared my experience was incredible. And to feel like I had so much extra support there, in addition to my family who were already so supportive.
Can I just jump in as well and say, I was on the call when Evie shared her story, and honestly, I could like hear it in the other people's voices when they kind of commented and asked questions. Everyone was really deeply moved by what she'd said, and were really curious, because a lot of the team that were on the call have children themselves, and it was really really strong presentation, especially from someone who was so anxious to do it. But yeah, it's made a difference to the wider community, and not just to Evie too. So it was a really big thing.
Yeah, thanks, Alyssa. I just wanted to add, actually, the main reason I decided to put myself forward to do that presentation was to help other people, because as Alyssa mentioned, a lot of the people in the call are parents themselves. So I wanted them to be able to ask me questions, and for me to be able to openly answer them, for them to hopefully help themselves and their own families. But it turned out that it helped me so much as well, which was amazing. The fact that I'd originally set out to help other people, and I actually ended up helping myself, which again was just an amazing feeling.
That must have been such a proud moment for you, and let's not underestimate the courage that it takes to open up, and there'll be people that really want to listen. Dan, what was it like for you?
For me, trying to open up at the start, I guess I didn't really understand what was going on. It happened from quite a young age, and I just took that as that. Well, that's who I am. Like this is me. That's not going to change. I guess it got to a point I was like, there's no point in talking about it. Everyone's going through something. Why is my story any different to anyone else's? But when it started to really affect me, and I started from withdrawing from different activities, and I wasn't essentially living the life that I wanted to, which was probably about 8-9 years later, which isn't a short amount of time, but I started reaching out, and the support I was getting wasn't something that was helpful for me at the time. I guess I was still in denial that I had mental health problems. There's always been a big stigmatism around mental health, especially in men, from my experience, especially from recently talking to friends as well. And it's something that I've always just tried to deal with by myself. Since I've had this for the majority of my life, like I said, I just took that as that's me, that's my life, that's who I am, that cannot change. I now know that that's not the case. I can completely change that. I can be a lot more positive about things. I can have my mental health in a position where it's not going to restrict me. And in more recent years, when I've reached out, I've had that support that's actually been beneficial for me. Well over 12, 13, 14 years, I've actually started to talk to friends, which they've kind of always known that there's been something. But what I found with, especially in guys, is they don't talk about this sort of thing. And from me actually opening up and talking to them about everything that I've been struggling with, we then started to have a conversation that they were also struggling with things, and they've just been handling it by themselves as well. I don't know why it is that way in guys, especially. I was brought up to just deal with everything by myself, not really share my feelings or my emotions, and that's had just a detrimental effect on me. But I know that obviously with helping friends with it, which has helped myself, is good in the long term. But do you know why that is, George? About guys specifically?
Yeah, I think there's still a bit of a man up. Guys need to be tough. It's all about the banter, and take the mickey out your mates if they start acting like a bit of a wet girl's blouse, talking about their feelings, all that nonsense. And so there is that, and I think that a lot of guys use that as a cover up to mask the fact that actually we don't have the emotional literacy or maturity to talk about it, because we just don't know how. Maybe that's because we've been conditioned through the male role models in our own lives, or the people we've seen around us, or culturally what we see on social media, in the media, all around us, sports people, and so we have this entrenched belief that we need to be strong, and to be strong means you can't talk about weakness like having feelings and not being able to cope, not being able to handle it by yourself, all of these things. And it's very, very destructive, and insidious as well. So as you said, if you have one person in a group who's acting like that, and if they're quite authoritative in that group, they have status, then it really makes it very difficult for anybody else in that group to buck the trend and talk about their feelings, which is why, again, hats off to you, Dan, for talking so openly and kind of normalizing this as a conversation, because as you've discovered, and it was great to share this with others as well, that when you do start talking about it, other people also feel like this is actually, it's okay. It is okay to talk about this. There's somebody who's a guy like you. If you can talk about it, then maybe I can share how I'm feeling. And actually, the world hasn't ended. People aren't mocking me and shunning me and pushing me outside of the tribe, which is ultimately our biggest fear, to be rejected. So there's a big psychological part to play in this as well. I mentioned about banter a moment ago. It's the sort of thing you can sort of brush off and keep that stiff upper lip and just talk about it and have a bit of a joke about it. But by doing that, you prevent yourself and others around you from actually having those enriching and empowering conversations that can help not just the individual who's having them and who may be struggling or having a tough time, but also those other people, men and women in that social network, who could also benefit from changing just 1% at a time, changing the culture, changing what's normal, and actually then maybe getting to that threshold where they feel comfortable in opening up as well, and talking a little bit more about how they feel.
I was just wondering, is there ever a right time to open up? Is there that perfect moment?
I guess personally for me, there was never really a right moment. It ended up being that my friends noticed it in me before I even said anything, and they broached the question, and they were just like, right, what's going on? And then I kind of didn't have a choice but to open up, because they'd come to me about it first, and it's really difficult thing to open up, regardless of gender or where you stand in life or what kind of job you've got. So I guess it's just whenever you feel like you're comfortable enough to acknowledge it in yourself.
Did it help, Alyssa, to have your friends approach you first and ask you questions?
Yeah, it was massively helpful for me, because it showed that, because one of my biggest fears was that everyone was like pretending to be my friend, and that they were just there because I was the quiet girl who didn't really know a lot of people. So the fact that they were kind of able to point out that there was something different in me kind of helped to stop me overthinking on that one point, and actually recognize that they were there for me and that they did want to help me, and it made it so much easier for me to then kind of relax a little bit and kind of remove myself from my shell.
Definitely, I definitely think it's important to reach out to your friends, especially if they've become distant or you haven't seen them for a while, or you just want to check up on them because they're a close friend of yours and you want them to be happy, you want them to be okay. So I'm really happy to hear that, Alyssa, that your friends are looking out for you and they're there for you when you need. It's really nice to have a great support group.
Definitely. And I've picked up throughout this podcast a lot of you talking about coping mechanisms. So, throughout your own personal mental health journey, what has been some of the things that have helped and supported you get through those difficult moments?
Just kind of about understanding and listening to yourself. This past week, like obviously so recent, has been really hard for me because obviously pubs have opened and everybody wants to go out, or my friends want to go out and get really drunk. But I find that when I drink the next day, my anxiety is a lot worse. As hard as it is, I found it important to just step back, listen to myself, and think, do I actually want to go out and get drunk? No. So what can I do? And most nights I've offered to drive, which is fine because it means that they then don't have to pay for a taxi. So they're more than happy for me to drive. They can have a drink. I can still have fun without having a drink, and we're all happy. So, yeah, as I mentioned, it's almost sometimes just about stepping out of the situation and thinking about what's genuinely best for you and what you actually want to do, and not feeling like, especially in these times when things are starting to go back to normal, that you have to do everything just because we haven't been able to for a year.
That's a really interesting point, Evie, and it highlights the fact that there shouldn't be a pressure to do something. What we ought to be doing is taking a step back and thinking, is this going to make me feel worse or is it going to make me feel better? Because what could work for someone else and your friend might not work for you, because we are all different, and that's absolutely fine. So, because of that, we'll experience situations differently, and it's about understanding ourselves and what works for us. Dan, what about you?
So like my first go-to would just be give someone a call. If I'm like I'm still having like a good day, but it could turn, I'd just give someone a call, have a little chat, and it's always nice, especially in the environment where you can't just go out and meet someone as freely. Even just talking or just FaceTiming someone has just been a massive help for me. And just music, that's been my go-to. That's been a massive help. So I've kind of got 2 playlists set up. So if I feel like I need a bit of energy and just feel like a little bit flat, I'll just go to that mana potion. That's just got everything to kind of like lift my spirits a little bit, like get me a bit more energized. And then the other one, which is the health potion, if I'm feeling a little bit low, don't really feel as motivated or as engaged with life, I guess. I just go to that, and that's just got the selection of music which just gets me back on track to my happy level. I guess there would be my 2 key coping mechanisms, along with just trying to get outside, trying to enjoy the sun that we've got at the moment, trying to enjoy that weather as summer starts to creep in. That's how I guess I manage and cope with my mental health.
That's really great to hear, actually. That's a good idea to create those playlists and then you've got them there as soon as you feel however you feel. They're there for you ready. So I might steal that one from you and try that myself.
For me personally, whenever I'm feeling low or down, I always go to music. I really struggle to find the right words sometimes, and lyrics just articulate them so beautifully. Whether it's a mood booster or some 80s, or whether it's something that really connects with you. I'm at my calmest when I'm going out on a walk and just put my headphones in, because I just disconnect from all the noise that is in my head, and I can really just focus in on those lyrics, which really does help me. So I'm 100% with you, Dan, on the power of a good playlist or just any creative outlet that helps you express yourself. On that, Dan, while you're working, how easy is it to, if you're ever feeling low, take yourself away to go and listen to your playlist or call a friend, FaceTime someone? Are you supported?
Yes, no, I'm supported by work. Because working from home, I can listen to music and know that I'm not going to distract anyone else. If I've got calls, then obviously no music will go ahead. But I'll manage that so I know that I'm in I guess, a good mood for the call, which I know can come across as putting on a face if I'm not completely there and trying to act like everything's fine. But since I've started talking about my mental health with a lot of people, even if someone asks me how I'm doing, I won't go for the stereotypical, like, yeah, I'm fine. I'll just say I'm just having one of those days. It's not been great. And everyone is completely understanding. And then that starts the conversation by the other person opening up a bit more, rather than just everyone being fine 24/7, because that's not the case. Everyone that I've kind of spoken to has just been really understanding with that.
George, listening to Evie, Alyssa and Dan, is there anything that you'd like to add? Any guidance that you'd like to share?
Yeah, sure. And again, great to hear some real life in the trenches, it's working now tips from those who've just shared. Certainly connecting, phoning a friend, speaking to somebody, even just sending a message and getting into a bit of a message exchange can lift the spirits and boost the mood, because you have all the hormonal responses that come from social connection. And that's one of the big challenges I think that we've had over the last 12 months or so, is the lack of connection. And although a phone call and a WhatsApp message doesn't quite fill the place of real life face-to-face conversation, it's not a bad substitute when you really need something. But yeah, so there's that. And Dan also mentioned about getting outside, and even if you're just getting outside without doing any sort of physical activity, the action of sunlight on your skin, even if it's a cloudy day, can really, really make a difference. And we know that vitamin D is incredibly important for regulating mood as well. We manufacture vitamin D by the action of sunlight on our skin. So getting out there and obviously taking care when it's hot like it is today, not getting burnt and all the rest of it, but making sure you're spending some time outside. But there are other things as well, like just taking care of yourself, your physical well-being. And again, talk a little bit about activity there, but I talk about the Dash for Performance principles on some of the sessions I've delivered for Nestlé Early Careers. So Dash just stands for diet, activity, sleep, and hydration. And each of those four elements, they're not just there to support long-term goals like lose weight, tone up, get fit, get healthy. They're incredibly important for regulating mood. And I'm sure that anybody who has had a bad night's sleep, whether that's induced through alcohol consumption or just a restless night for any other reason, maybe stress or other things happening, and how you feel the next day, you're just never on your A game. You never feel at your very best the next day. So we know that sleep has a very, very rapid impact on mood and how you feel. But so too does diet. If you eat a really big lunch or a load of sugar's the worst for this. Not to step on sugar consumption. You know, I eat my fair share as well, and it's quite perfectly healthy to eat sugar. But if you have loads of it through the day, then you're on this sugar a roller coaster where your blood sugar levels go up and then they crash and they go back up again because you get cravings, and it's again really difficult to get yourself into the best possible place mentally when you're on this up and down roller coaster. And activity as well. So if you're spending a lot of time sitting down, which is possibly more pronounced if you're working from home, then that's going to have an impact on your mood, because just everything just slows down. You find it harder to concentrate, get distracted more easily, productivity goes down. So anxiety can then go up because you feel like you're not getting enough done. Whereas actually just taking a break every 55 minutes for 5 minutes could be all you need. Get outside, walk around, get some water to hydrate, and then return to work and feel like you can re-engage again. That can also have an impact not only on productivity, but also on how you feel about yourself, your self-efficacy, your capacity to make a difference, and your engagement with what it is that you're doing. So taking care of your physical well-being you don't have to be perfect with this. Don't have to be training for Ironman or doing anything ridiculous, but just taking care of the basics as far as possible and as consistently as possible. That can really, really make a big difference to how you feel through the day.
Definitely. I definitely agree with that. I've started to take some smaller breaks at work rather than working for a huge chunk of time and then suddenly having a break at lunch. Just going off and getting a fresh glass of water or quickly stepping outside just does a world of good.
When I get really, really, really anxious, some of the ideas that you guys have come up with have been like really cool, and I'm definitely going to try them. But I find that when I get anxious, I get more of an overstimulation of senses. So for me, being around or trying to speak to other people can actually make me feel worse. And so my kind of like other side of it is for me to just kind of pull myself away from whatever it is I'm doing. So whether that's a big crowd of people or messaging a friend or being on the phone with a friend, I'll just kind of hang up or stop messaging for a bit and go outside and get some fresh air, or I'll go, and if I'm at home, I'll play with my dog, or I'll take my camera out in the garden and take some photos, or go on my bike and just kind of get somewhere that's really quiet and away from, I guess, that social interaction, just to let myself like calm myself down properly. And I know that's quite different to a lot of people, but it's I guess the thing that I find the most useful, I guess.
Yeah, it's whatever works best for you. It's whatever you've tried and tested. And it's really nice for you to share that, because some of us today might find that that actually helps for us if we're in quite a stressful situation, to just take a step back. If you've had a stressful call at work, once you've come off that call, lock your screen, go outside and take yourself away. It's a really good point.
There's another point as well on that, and great that you've had that experience, Liz. You know what works for you. And I think it's very easy for people to fall into the trap or the thinking patterns that, well, this is how you deal with anxiety. This is how you deal when you're with depression, or if you're having one of those days. Was the reality is there are lots of different ways, and I think it's on us as individuals to figure out what works, to try things for sure, but then take what works and discard the rest. And another example of that is social media, which has been a fantastic accelerator for this conversation about mental health and how we could and should be talking about it more. But what we also see is that a lot of people will come out about their mental health. They'll open up about it on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and they're having these conversations very, very openly, and it can send the signal that this is how you do it. If you're ready to, unless you're ready to talk about your mental health on social media, then you're hiding it away, and you should be talking about it publicly like this. And of course, that's not the right approach for the majority of people. Like I will talk about my mental health, but I won't use it as therapy. I won't be talking about my mental health on social media if I don't have some kind of support mechanism in place to help me through that, because it's so unpredictable. And if you're feeling low and you're feeling down and you think, well, I'm going to post on Instagram because I'm going to, or Facebook, I'm going to get some support from my tribe, from my friends, and you post, and nobody or very few people give you what you've been waiting for, give you that acknowledgement and that validation by liking or commenting or giving you the virtual hugs. If you don't get that because of the social media algorithms just haven't put it out to people, or they just haven't done it for whatever other reason, then that's going to make that situation 10 times worse, 100 times worse, because now you're telling yourself the story, well, nobody cares, nobody likes me, and I've got to suffer by myself. Nobody's there for me. And so social media can be really useful for this, but I wouldn't say that it's the thing for everybody to do in terms of using it to talk about mental health. It's good to kind of get the conversation going, but also have those other mechanisms in place that these are the ways that work for you. And if that means speaking to a friend on the phone or withdrawing for a little while to gather your thoughts, spend time in nature, which of course is the theme for Mental Health Awareness Week this year, then do whatever you need to do to get yourself back to a place where you feel strong enough. And then, maybe talk about that experience on social media can benefit others as well.
No, I totally agree. And At the end of the day, for some people, seeing other people's stories on social media can be triggering to their own history and things. So ultimately, that can always make your own. If you're having a bad day anyway, that can make it so much worse. So it's always, it's difficult to avoid it, obviously, because a lot of people, as you said, a lot of people are sharing it. But like I said, it's always something you've just got to be careful of when you are on social media. If you are having a bad day, to
if I'm ever feeling a little bit wobbly, not quite myself, then going on social media is the very last thing that I'll do. Because even seeing super positive posts, I've got a lot of people on my feed who are doing amazing things. They're out there running and exercising and eating great food all the time and really happy. And I love that normally. But if I'm feeling a little bit out of sorts, then being faced with that, it's like, oh, everyone else is happy except for me.
It's just not what you want to see, is it?
Just protect yourself from that. It's like, that's not the time to be going on and distracting yourself with social. We don't need it for that purpose. So be kind of wary and be careful about how much time you're spending on social media, and when as well. Not just how much time, but when you're actually on it.
Yeah, definitely taking breaks from it is great. I had a big break from it last October, just for a month, and just had some time away, had some time to do different things, and went to the Yorkshire Dales and climbed 2 of the peaks, and didn't use my phone the whole time. And it was one of the nicest breaks ever that I've had. And after working from home for so long, it was around 6 months at that time, that just time away from it was just incredible. It was just great to be away from a screen and to be out in nature. Like you say, that's the topic for this year's mental health month.
I'm definitely learning that it's important to switch off, take breaks, whether it is going for a walk, whether it is, listening to music, playing with your dog, whatever it is, switching off even social media. The importance of just not being on the screen, especially when you're working from home, it does wonders for your mental health, and that's something that I'm definitely learning myself. This kind of brings me on to the next segment. We have our new starters joining this year. So for a lot of them, it will be a massive change, whether it's transitioning from school to a big company. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of queries, a lot of concerns that they have. So I've asked them to send them in. So I thought we could together answer some of those questions and hopefully give some reassurance, not just to our new starters, but to anyone that's going through some change in their career or their personal journeys. Hopefully this part will help. So the first question comes about that whole transition piece, and when you do suffer with anxiety, how can you cope on that first day and make a good impression?
Yeah, no, completely. Like I started about 6-7 months ago now, and I was anxious about joining the team. I was previously furloughed, so it's been a while out of work. I was new to the company, so everything was new. I was not sure of anything that was going on. Having to speak to a lot of people that I didn't know how I'll kind of be received or kind of be treated. Everyone's just been extremely open, extremely welcoming, and that just calmed any sort of nerves, I guess, that I had that I might not fit in. There's no expectation for you to know everything straight away. I've not come across anyone that has not wanted to help me both fit in and grow in the role. And the best way that I can kind of see to look at starting in a new company and a new team and a new role is by imagining that you're in a glass elevator and you're at the bottom and there's elevators in the middle of the city. If you imagine the city being Nestlé, and as the elevator goes up, based on how long you're in the company, you're going to start to see more and everything's going to start to make sense. You're going to fit in a bit more, but everyone starts from the ground floor at the end of the day. But the longer you're there, the more people that you end up talking to, that confidence will grow. You'll be able to understand a lot more. It just takes time. And through that time, you'll get to a point where everything seems to just make sense and you'll fit in.
Yeah, I love that analogy about the glass elevator, Dan. I'm just following on from that. My main worry about starting at Nestlé, I'm sure, Dan, you can relate because we both started virtually. So yeah, my main worry was it feeling really lonely and feeling like I couldn't reach out to people because I didn't want to be annoying if they were busy because I couldn't physically see that they were busy in front of me. If we'd have been in the office, that would have been different. But genuinely, I couldn't feel and have felt more supported joining this company. I'd never had a corporate job before. I'd never worked in finance before. I've started on the apprenticeship scheme. So to be quite honest, I didn't know what to expect, but I've had an amazing experience so far. And as Dan said, we can't wait to just keep going up in the glass elevator and seeing more and more of the company.
Like, I've never met anyone that I've worked with. I've only seen faces and heard voices from the laptop in the same room, living, working, and training. So it's nerve-wracking to know that you're not going to meet someone, but all it is a message away. It's just a call away, and you'll get that support that you need as soon as they're free, and everyone's always willing to make time for you.
I guess for me it's slightly different because I started in the office, so I was meeting and connecting with all these people. But then in terms of like the role I'm in now, that I've been in for 6 months, I've only met one of my teammates, and that was because we bumped into each other at the gym last week. But I'm just kind of grateful that I'd had that exposure to begin with, because I was able to fully understand the Nestlé culture, and the culture itself has actually translated pretty well, in my opinion, to virtual working. If I was starting now, yes, I would be really worried about, but a few years down the line, kind of looking backwards, I don't think I would need to be as worried about, because it's not as scary as I guess I first thought it would be. It would be kind of, it's more exciting to think, oh, actually, I'm going to be back in and meeting everyone again and seeing all these faces that I haven't seen in like a year.
Even people in management roles get anxious. It's absolutely normal that when you're going through something as big as a new job, that there is anxiety there, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. What's important is that you're willing to learn, you're open, you're honest. Someone once told me, if you ask a question every day, you're learning something new every day. So never be ashamed to ask if you're unsure on something. And then by doing these things, by being open, by being honest, by being in that moment and present, you'll hopefully get the exact same treatment back. People will be honest, people will be open with you, and they'll give you the time that you're giving them. Another question that's come in is about guilt, and the guilt that you might feel when you do take that time for yourself. And how do you make sure you have a good impression at work, you give your 100%, but also manage study and that home and social aspect as well?
When I first started at Nestlé, I didn't think I'd find it too difficult to do my work and my study time at the same time. I thought it would be manageable. But then kind of as I've gone on, it's definitely been like something I've felt a lot more guilty about, especially coming into this point where I've got when I'm writing my dissertation. It's like, when do I do it? Because obviously you need some downtime. You want to have a bit of a weekend or a bit of a night off, and it's figuring out how to deal with that. And it's difficult because you do feel a bit guilty.
I definitely felt guilty, and I remember how much of a challenge it was, because for me, my priority was the team and the work and the responsibility I had in my role. But actually, we're on a development program for a reason, and we need to focus on that study time and also make sure that we don't reach burnout stage, because then we're not helping in work. Probably not going to be performing to our best in our studies, and we're not going to be able to easily find that time for ourselves, which is so important for productivity. There's a reason that we have 20% off the job learning, and it's to manage our time more efficiently and to make sure that we're not going to reach that burnout stage by properly planning our calendars and our time. What I've learned is the power of communication. So we are all human. We can't do everything. There's 24 hours in a day. So if you are feeling like you're struggling to manage the workload that you've got, talk to your line manager, talk to your team, see what can be shared out. And then, when you do have that time dedicated in your calendar to just focus on your dissertation or studying, and you turn off your emails, so you're not going to be distracted, you're not going to be tempted to reply to someone. When you are working, you're in that moment. When you are studying, and when you have that time for yourself, that's your time, so you fully switch off.
I'm studying as part of my apprenticeship too, and I'm just coming to the end of it. And I think what has really helped me is just like planning ahead your time, planning ahead with when you're going to study, when you're going to write the essay, and then putting in time to chill and putting in time to take some time away, because you'll really appreciate that time away and you'll know that you've worked for it.
You'll definitely deserve the breaks. It's not an easy time balancing study, work, and a social life, but it will honestly be one of the most rewarding things that you do. But just don't bottle things up. If you are feeling like it's getting on top of you, the best thing you can do is ask for help, and the help will be given. Another question that came through was, how do you tell a line manager that you are going through some mental health challenges?
I mean, I've done it 4 times now, and each time I've done it differently. Most recently with this new role, because we were virtual, I just kind of stuck 15 minutes in the diary with my team and my line manager, and just sat them all down in a room and just went, this is, this is who I am, this is what I'm dealing with. And I did it right at the very start. I think it was like 2 weeks into the role, and I was just like, this is what kind of support I'm going to need. This is what, if I go away for a couple of minutes during the day, or if I disappear off for a little bit, don't worry, it's just that I need a bit of time and stuff. And I just sat them down and told them straight off. And that's something I learned from doing it the time before that. I didn't tell my line manager about it, and I just thought, oh, it's fine, I'll be able to deal with it. And then I ended up having a massive panic attack in the middle of the office in the workday. So I kind of didn't have a choice but to tell them then, because I'd left it off for so long. Being upfront, I guess, is the best way to get the support, because I've got so much support from my team now that I've just kind of opened up about it and told them. And we've got things in place to support it and make sure that I'm getting the best out of my work.
Alicia, it's so great to hear you say that. Not just that you had that conversation, but actually the other half of that, I think, is the bit that people really need to hear and to internalize and then to do. And that's that you instructed them or encouraged them to what support you needed, because that will be different for everybody. So you said, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm dealing with, what I need from you to support me is X, Y, and Z. And what a relief for somebody who's on the receiving end of that to then know, oh, right, now I've got clarity on how I need to be, how I need to behave, what I need to do, say. Do I to leave you alone, to support you, to kind of give you some extra time if you're the line manager? It's such a valuable and powerful addition to the stock. I'm struggling with mental health and anxiety and depression, or whatever it might be. Giving people those instructions as to how you, or the best way to support you, I think that's absolutely tremendous. And the more people who are able to do that, the easier it's going to be for everyone to deal with mental health issues. So yeah, well done.
Thank you. And yeah, it's definitely something I'd recommend people doing it, because it has made a massive difference. And yeah, it's something it took me a while to figure out that I should have done from the starting block point. But yeah, I couldn't think of any other way that you could do it, really.
It's always quite daunting opening up, isn't it? Because you don't know how it's going to be received. I know I've spoken with my line manager, and like yourself, I stuck in 15 minutes. And I just say, like, look, being completely transparent about the situation, this is what I'm going through right now. There's not much support that I need. I just need some understanding that the work will get done. Do not worry about that. I just kind of need to focus on my mental health and making sure that's in a good place. That doesn't take or draw back from my ability to actually do the job. And I've only had nothing but positive stuff come back from that. And it's any support that you kind of need, it will be there. But just being open and honest about what you're actually going through just pays dividends.
Literally just going to say that what you've both done is so admirable to me. I never sat down and spoke about my mental health to my line manager in one session, really. When I first joined, she made it clear that she would always be there if I wanted to talk, and she has been. In all of our monthly check-ins, we've spoken about things. If things are going on with me, I feel like I can openly speak about them to her. And it got to a point where I felt we needed weekly check-ins, and we would speak to each other on a weekly basis rather than just on a monthly basis. So rather than me telling her what support I needed, she was already openly giving it to me, and I was receiving it, and I really appreciated that. And I'm in my second team now at Nestlé, and in both teams we have a workload check-in, or like a mental health check-in, in our weekly meetings, which I've found so valuable. But the main principle behind it is that everybody in the team basically rates themselves on how they are feeling, and if they are down or if they need support, then there's that opportunity to talk about it and to make the team aware, so that we can all support and help each other. So I think the way in which you both, Dan and Alyssa, sat down and spoke to your teams in order to be able to get support from them is almost similar to what I do or have done in both of my teams, where we sit down on a weekly basis and check in with each other and make sure that anybody who needs support has always got it.
There's so much good stuff in here, not just for people who are struggling with mental health, but for line managers as well, who I know are often, they want to help, they want to be there, but they just don't know how. And knowing that actually you can not just say, how's everyone feeling? If you've got any problems, come and let me know, but to actually actively ask, what support do you need, knowing that it's going to be different for everybody, as we've discovered on today's podcast, and how empowering and relieving it is to know that, well, that's what I need to do to get the best out of my team, best performance, and also the best engagement and the most amount of happiness and fulfillment from everybody as well, which hopefully is really what it's all about.
I just want to say a massive thank you that you've come onto this podcast today and been brave enough to share your story, offer guidance and support to our listeners, because, even though it should be a natural conversation to have to talk about how we're feeling and to break that stigma that it's something to be ashamed of, I do understand that it is still a big deal and it is still something that you're getting used to. So to come on here and vocalise everything in a really articulate way and honest and open way is really inspiring. So thank you. I know I've learned a lot myself in how I can help my friends and family, and also myself whenever I'm feeling a little bit low, and actually understanding that it's okay for me to reach out and ask for help as well, and have those coping mechanisms in place. And there's definitely things that you've mentioned that I'll start to try doing, like journaling. So yeah, really insightful. Thank you so much. I thought we'd end it by, if you'd like to share any phrases or quotes that you live by, that have really helped you in times of struggle. So yeah, I'll hand it over for some finishing words.
My favourite quote of all time is, love yourself like you love your best friend. I think, as I mentioned before, it's so important to give yourself time and space, and just be there for yourself as much as other people can be there for you. At the end of the day, you only have yourself. So love yourself like you love your best friend. And whenever I feel down, I always remember that quote, because I absolutely adore my friends.
Oh, that is so lovely. I think on the other side of that as well, it's about the advice that you give your friends. You will give the best advice you can to those that you love. So you should also give that advice to yourself. If your friends came to you asking for help, what would you say? And then think about whether that's something that you can use yourself and actually apply to your own life. Alyssa, what about you?
For me, I know it's a bit odd with the whole climate and things, but mine's a Harry Potter quote that I just absolutely live by. I love it so much. It's one thing that Hagrid says in the fifth book, and he says, like, I am who I am. I'm not ashamed. Never be ashamed. There's someone who'll hold it against you, but they're not worth bothering about. And it's just, for me, keeping that in my head and just thinking, this is who I am. I'm gonna own it. I don't need to, all these like dark thoughts and things in my head. They're not who I am. I know who I am, and I'm gonna work to be who I am, I guess, is the best thing to say.
For me, my go-to is just, it's okay not to be okay. Like, you don't need to be perfect all the time. You can have bad days and still be fine. Like, you don't need to kind of just dwell on the negatives all the time. And yeah, it's fine just not to feel great sometimes, because it's not always going to be that way. To just treat yourself, do something nice, have a nice meal, like go for a walk, do some exercise, do whatever that makes you happy. Like I guess my go-to is Shrek. Like, I love Shrek, so I could literally like tell you word for word what happened in Shrek. It's my go-to. But yeah, it's okay not to be okay.
That's great.
Poppy, what about you? Do you have anything?
Oh gosh, Abby, you've put me on the spot there. I don't actually have. Well, to be honest, I just go by everything happens for a reason, and even if something bad happens, something good is on the way, and it's not all that bad in the end, and there's always something good around the corner.
I definitely live by everything happens for a reason, and also trying to change that mindset into, instead of what could go wrong, what could go right, and knowing that an issue or a problem is never permanent, it's just temporary, and there's, like you said, there's something better coming. What about you, George? Anything to end this on?
Yeah, it's not so much a quote, but it's certainly an idea, a principle, if you will, which is that I think we all benefit from practicing more self-compassion, a bit like Evie was saying earlier about how you treat your friends and how you treat yourself, loving your friends. It's easier said than done sometimes, but when you can tune into what you're saying to yourself about yourself, and then ask, how could I be more compassionate and understanding, knowing that you're probably doing the very best you can with the resources that you have available, then that can certainly help give you a little bit more of a comfort and a support, self-support as well.
Definitely, and I think we don't give ourselves enough credit for the small steps that we take, our own little achievements, whether it is just getting up and getting changed in the morning. I think that's really important, and we can take a couple of steps back, but it's about the fact that we keep going, and we show that resilience day by day, and knowing that there is support there when we need it, and it's absolutely fine to ask for it, and to receive it. The fact that we've got people on the call today that have been going through these challenges for years, starting at such a young age, it just shows how much strength you have.
It is really encouraging to hear that you have found ways to support your mental health and to inspire others who are going through similar challenges. It is really important to talk about how we are feeling.
I'll stop the podcast here, but like mental health is a continuum, it does not stop. Therefore, this discussion should not stop, and there's so much we haven't covered and so much that we can cover. So we'll make sure that we continue to encourage people to speak up and be brave enough to share their story and encourage others to do the same. But if you are needing that extra support, we will leave resources in the description box below. But really just look out for yourself, listen to yourself. What do you need? What will help you? And never ever be ashamed of talking about how you're feeling or asking for that help, because you will receive it.